What do couples come to you with?
There's things that happen in communication where if we don't resolve it or repair from it, we sort of take away negative beliefs about the other person. And so we kind of are sweeping things under the rug. At a certain point, kind of that rug gets so big and people can't take it anymore. And sometimes there are ways to like discharge that and like release, whether it's anger, or, we finally have that talk and we do some kind of repair. We're like cleaning the rug a little bit and ironing it out. And other times the rug, it just gets so big and, people get tired and they're like, maybe get at a later part of their life where their kids move out and it's just us, or there's different things, different pressures. Or like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be happy. I deserve to be happy. I don't want to be a roommate with my partner anymore, right? People, they come to a relationship with whatever wounds they have that are unique to them. It doesn't matter the level of distress coming in at the beginning. It doesn't inform the effectiveness at all. And that includes if there's just been an affair, it includes all of that, right?
So are you trying to tell me that trust can be rebuilt with EFT?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Welcome back to TBH with Natasha, where we have honest conversations that help us build better lives and better relationships. And today we have the pleasure of having on the show OFIR Vaisman. He is a clinical director at OFIR Counseling and an emotionally focused couples therapist. What is that? We're going to find out during the show. You're with me, Natasha, and thank you for joining us on TBH with Natasha. A very, very warm welcome to the show, OFIR.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction.
So, OFIR, considering that you are a master's in counseling, what really drew you to being a couples counselor?
I've got like a very short answer I give some people, and I've got kind of like the real answer, the real deep one. I'll give you a short version of the deep one.
Hold it right there. I think I prefer the real one.
The real one, yeah, I know. They're both real, but one is just a little bit more like the real deeper reason. So I got out of a really abusive relationship in the end of 2006. It was about a year and a half old. And I won't get too much into that, but going through that journey and going through all that pain, I didn't have any resources. I didn't know who to go to for help. I was only 20 at the time. And so I didn't know anything about mental health, let alone couples counseling or anything like that. But the moment I got out of that relationship, I was searching for like, how can I incorporate this into my life? Both from the perspective of like learning how to never get into this situation again myself, but then also to help anyone, whether it's the male or the female in sort of my scenario there, not sort of feel like they're lost and have no answers and have to suffer the sort of torture and pain that I went through at the time. So it was very like a very organic way to get into the field.
And that's such a beautiful way to kind of reach a certain goal or, a road that takes you somewhere, because it's either pain that draws you to it, and then you have more passion towards what you do.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, when I went back to school, so I had done only one semester, like 3.5 years before that point, in the beginning of 2003. And then literally a week and a half after that relationship ended, I was back at Kwantlen. That's where I went to school. And not only did I have passion, but it was such an expedited path. I was around other, mostly, colleagues, other students that didn't really know what they wanted to be doing. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do, not just counseling now, but couples counseling. And so every course I took was aimed at extracting whatever was useful for that path. Whereas other people are kind of like learning and just kind of openly trying to absorb things. I was only taking what I needed to take from that and then really just rushing through everything else. So much so that it took me only 2 years to finish that bachelor's. I just did it as fast as I could.
Wonderful. Yeah. And you know what drew me to this topic? Been married for 21 years. I think I've lost count, but yeah, 21 years, known my husband for a decade or so. And there are friends when you're in this kind of an age group or this life stage, you have friends who come and discuss with you things about their own marriage. You're struggling with issues in your own marriage. And this is where I thought, hey, there is a need to talk about certain aspects of marriage which will enrich it. and probably open your eyes to so many other aspects of it for which we have actually turned our eye to. So that's why I said no better person to have on the show than to have you, because I've heard so much about the work that you do, especially with something called EFT, emotionally focused therapy for couples. So we'll get into that offer during the show, but if I had to ask you, in the kind of people that have come to meet you, what is the common thread, or how do they start off with? The initial few meetings, what do couples come to you with?
Yeah, if I had to really distill it down, it's a relationship distress, whatever that is. And people will often say we want to work on our communication, right? And so that could look like a lot of different things, but it's some breakdown in communication, right? You mentioned you've been with your partner for 21 years, and I'm sure somewhere along the lines there's like issues that come up, and whatever people want to attribute, when relationships don't work, the ending of it, whether it's our bad sex life, we fell out of love, whatever it is, there are preventable things or things that preemptively you can get ahead of, or even from my vantage point, more often than not, it's more of like a crisis, or like we're like, we can't take this anymore. We're willing to do something that we've never done before. So couples counseling is where people will knock on my door. And so, yeah, to bring it to your relationship, there's things that happen in communication where if we don't resolve it or repair from it, we sort of take away negative beliefs about the other person, right? Whatever it is. And so we kind of are sweeping things under the rug. At a certain point, kind of that rug gets so big and people can't take it anymore. And sometimes there are ways to like discharge that and like release, whether it's anger, or, we finally have that talk and we do some kind of repair. We're like cleaning the rug a little bit and ironing it out. And other times the rug, it just gets so big and, people get tired and they're like, maybe get at a later part of their life where their kids move out and it's just us, or there's different things, different pressures, or like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be happy. I deserve to be happy. I don't want to be a roommate with my partner anymore, right?
I love the analogy that you've drawn with cleaning, especially when we're looking at a relationship. You either get regular maintenance done, or you come to a stage where you really need deep cleaning, and that'll take a lot of effort as well. So before we get to the deep cleaning part, let's kind of find a path where we can remedy it sooner, hopefully. And if it has come to that point where it needs deep cleaning, we can address that as well. So the topic for today, so there's so much to unpack, offer with you. I don't know, I can think of 10 different topics at this very point, but let's get with one thing. Focusing on a formula, if you may, for a happy marriage. So do we have something like that?
EFT specifically, it doesn't look at things in the perspective of like an outcome and like what is the ideal outcome, or like here's a model relationship and this is the kind of the secrets to that. There is another model called the Gottman model, and they do, right? And what they're doing is reverse engineering like happy couples. No different than like a Tony Robbins will look at like, here's a successful person in this kind of business. Look at their attributes. What did they do in the day of the life, and try to apply that for yourself. And I think that's helpful, but for the deep cleaning analogy, it can only go so far. The reason for that, and this is sort of like perspective that I have and EFT would have, is people, they come to a relationship with whatever wounds they have that are unique to them, right? So you got, to use more analogies, you've got I like to use this baking analogy, right? You've got this one ingredient that you use for the pie. And that's one person, their DNA, their upbringing, their wounds, everything that they bring to the table the moment they meet their partner. You've got the other person, right? And inevitably, like gravity, like a mathematical equation, the outcome of baking that recipe is what it is. It's like in chemistry, or like in a baking recipe, it's like very fine-tuned, right? And whatever cycle, meaning their communication, their dynamic, is already pre-written in the stars, so to speak.
I'm smiling because when I look at my husband and my relationship, we both come from slightly different background, so the way we were brought up. I'm the only child, so you can only imagine. The focus was me. I was more time was given in my nurturing. But then again, I had certain life events which were very different. I lost my mom very young, so that shaped me into being more independent really early on in life. Then there's my husband, who's part of a big family. They have got like 5 children, extended family, and a secure home, and working mom, and a different family dynamic. And when we two come together, our parenting styles are so different, and that's more often than not a big area of conflict.
Contention, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
like, am I too soft? Is he too tough? And as you said, and I think Gabor Mate, who is another very famous mind in psychology, he has spoken about how we all bring our pain from our past, and that's exactly what you're talking about.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, one of the big kind of quotes that he has is this, trauma is not what happened to you, it's what you took from it as a result of that event. Like what you still carry with you. That's the trauma. Right? So that I really live by for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when couples come to you and they're saying, okay, what are the kind of issues that they're having? So one is breakdown of communication, you mentioned. Anything else?
It always shows up in the breakdown of communication. So like to your point around you and your partner, it's around parenting, right? Like when you have to arrive at a collective decision together around what we're doing with our child, right? This is where the ego comes up. This is where some of the unresolved issues, right, come up, right? Some bigger things that people think are unresolvable, but actually are, that's why I bring up, is things that are so different in terms of like what we want, that it just seems like it's like a bridge too far. One person wants kids, one person doesn't. It's like, well, it has to be one or the other.
That's a deal breaker though.
But it doesn't. No, that's not true, right? Like, let's say a big one is like, they think it's unresolvable, but it's like one person's preference or affinity for cleanliness.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So that's a big one. Like and division of labor around chores in the house, especially with culture and male roles, female roles, right? It seems like it's a valid thing to fight about, but 99.999% of times, it's never about the thing you're fighting about. It's about these unhealed wounds that rub up against each other.
That's crazy. It's like you're a fly on the wall in my house, and it looks like it's every home story.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason for that is you can have 50 different fights about 50 different completely seemingly different things. And so sometimes we'll call that content. The reason we call it content is despite 50 different things being fought about, the underlying experience, the underlying trigger that gets hit is the same. So you might be and people will say, we're having the same fight for 50 years, right? And why are we having the same fight is that piece is still unresolved. I'm still not heard about that piece.
And that's where EFT comes in.
That's where I come in. That's where like any kind of experiential couples counseling comes in. So EFT is one example of that.
Okay, we'll delve more into how EFT can help couples, but if we had to look at some certain rules or formulas, just for today's show, could you kind of enumerate? I've heard of these 555 rule, 777 rule.
Yeah.
Maybe enlighten us with one. I want to take notes.
And I'm going to stick to, we don't want to have rules.
Oh, okay.
The reason we don't want to have hard and fast rules, the reason is, and some of them sound great. Let's have a weekly date night, right? Like, it sounds great.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Or like one partner will say, hey, give us something to read. And so I'll give them something to read. Well, again, the EFT is very attachment theory based. So the pursuer, the anxious attached person is going to read that book and then they're going to say, hey, they're going to come next session. They're going to say, hey, I read the book and he didn't read the book.
Right.
I set the date night. Now it's just another piece of content to fight about.
Ouch.
Right? Do you see that?
Yeah.
So if you want some kind of like rule-based or an ideal relationship, it's one in which you are open to be yourself and you're reinforced for that person by your partner. Meaning, things that are hard for you to share, whether it's certain emotions, right? It's called emotionally focused therapy for a reason. Another word for emotion is just truth or experience.
Right.
Right? They're just the same thing. What is the truth? What is your real primary experience? Oftentimes, we don't feel safe to share that experience, right? Again, because of old wounds, when we naturally as babies or as children try to share our real experience, we got rejected and validated for it. And so we learned another indirect way to get our needs met, right? And then that gets carried on to the present relationship. So we share in that way. What we're trying to sort of unlearn or override is, hey, is your partner the same as your mom, the same as your dad? Are they going to do the same thing that your parents did that created this wound? Most of the time unintentionally. So not blaming or anything like that around the original wound. But if you open your eyes, if you try to share again in that vulnerable way, right, and your partner is there for you, we call that a corrective experience. We're correcting for an old experience with a new one, with that, and that creates healing. That creates safety. That creates deeper connection. That creates that resolution of whatever that underlying thing to those 50 different fights. That's the idea.
And once you're aware of this trigger and how it's affecting your partner, you then make corrective, or you take corrective measures? No?
No, but it's good you mentioned that, because it's what most people try to do, right? And then it falls back, because now you're trying to change yourself, right, in order to not trigger your partner. The issue isn't your behavior. The issue isn't, I mean, obviously there's some problematic behavior, but it's not that your behavior is the problem. It's that your behavior is by your partner because of their wound, right? Their wound creates sort of this like sensitivity to certain behavior, loud noises, footsteps, certain words, certain tones, whatever it might be. And their wound sort of projects onto that, and that's what triggers them. So by trying to like tiptoe around it and change your behavior, if something else ends up triggering them, you're going to be like, oh, I'm trying so hard, and it's still doing it, right? So the solution isn't to change your behavior. The solution is for them to take ownership and responsibility over their own wounds and open up those wounds, right? Sometimes I refer to them as like, and I like this analogy, as invisible landmines. No one purposefully walks on a landmine and blows up their leg, right? So that's what a fight is, or that's what a trigger is. This landmine explodes, whatever reaction to the landmine is there. And then the first person's like, oh my God, I didn't know, I didn't mean to do that, right? And they're like, oh, I'm going to try really hard to avoid these landmines. No, we want to dismantle, we want to disarm, we want to heal these landmines so that next time that behavior is there, it's no longer triggering. That's the goal.
You could correct me if I'm wrong, but, and I have tried this, the EMDR therapy, is that very similar to the EFT?
No.
Or does that help kind of detonate these landmines?
Yeah, so EMDR and another model that's an offshoot of EMDR called OEI. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. OEI stands for observed and experiential integration. Just big words, the acronyms are easier. They do the same thing as each other, but they're very different from EFT. What they're aimed to do is there's like I don't even know if there's a category for these kinds of approaches or models or frameworks, but essentially another way for him, because the creator of OEI, I know him quite well. He's local here. He teaches at Trinity Western. Rick Bradshaw. He's amazing. He says it's non-invasive brain surgery.
Wow.
It's a way for your trauma to come out, and without having to talk about it, for us to kind of pull out the trauma and process it, erase it from your brain, so that what's left over is just the memory without the emotional residue around it, right? To bring Gabor's point, you kind of are bringing into the room in small, sometimes bigger chunks, and then processing it. And so it does help, right? It does help sort of recognize what's yours and what's mine, what I carry from the past. Because oftentimes with triggers, it's just like 0 to 100 so fast, and the protective mechanism comes in to protect you, and it's you don't even remember it. Because what happens when you're triggered, especially in romantic relationships, is all the blood that's in the part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, that's able to plan and think and be rational, that gets hijacked by your amygdala. Meaning all the blood leaves that part of the brain. Just like when you eat and all the blood goes to your stomach for a while, same thing now it goes to your amygdala, because you're in survival mode.
Yes, it's a fight and flight response, right?
It can be.
Okay.
It can be if it's wired, like because a partner shouldn't be a threat, right?
You're right.
A healthy partner, right? But if in close relationships you've had the experience where relationships are a threat, right?
Wow.
So what's funny is in the amygdala, love and sort of that fear response are right beside each other.
Whoa.
So you have a choice in a way once you do this work to pick love over the fight, flight, freeze. But fight, flight, freeze will protect your heart if it's been hurt.
So coming back to any rules that we can follow, and you said there are no rules, how do we go about this very complicated and the huge decision that people make when they get into a marriage? And it's a huge decision. I don't know. Sometimes I think some people shouldn't do it because it involves a lot of work, right? And if you're getting into it, you better be sure that you're in it for the
you're
roller
ready to
coaster
do the work.
ride.
Yeah. So other than obviously coming and seeing me,
yes, of course.
I would say, you have to be ready to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think each relationship someone's been in before, there's obviously it didn't work. They're not in that relationship anymore. There's big lessons in those relationships. The pain that you have is informing what you're going into this relationship with, right? So yes, we need to kind of grieve and heal and then kind of reflect on what was my part of that relationship. I'm going to inherently, it doesn't matter how much I think, this is my belief. It doesn't matter how much work you've done as a single person, whatever you carried from that last relationship, meaning not from that relationship, but that was unhealed even from before that relationship, you will carry on to the new relationship.
Yeah.
Right? So that's your burden, baggage that you're bringing in. And it's really good to be aware of it, not to push it under the rug like we talked about, or, to, put it on the other person, but to own it, maybe even talk about it, maybe not a first date conversation, but at some point, as it gets serious, to own your parts, to learn about your partner's parts that aren't healed. And then, you want to do this work together. It's, if you have a willing partner, then I think, and that's what we do when we start the process is we kind of have to make sure they're aligned, right? One of the only prerequisites to starting any kind of couples work, especially EFT, is the willingness to do the work is one, and the aligned goals that we actually want to work on this relationship. And I don't have both my feet out, I'm already with someone else, or whatever it is, or I'm already done and I'm just here for you. That's not EFT, right? EFT is when both people want to work on the relationship and are willing to do the work.
When you speak about EFT, and it has a lot to do with emotions, and you mentioned willingness as well, usually, is it the wife who comes to you, or are the husbands also more open, or are they more reluctant?
That's one myth that is relatively true, that it is the wife. But the caveat is, it's not about whether it's the man or the woman, it's the pursuer versus the withdrawer. The pursuer is the anxiously attached individual.
Right. And it could be a man.
It can be a man. So in about 20% of cases, it's the man that is the pursuer, and the woman is the withdrawer, the avoidant. And in 80% of cases, it's the woman. So that's why it's the woman that is the one initiating. That being said, sometimes both are on the phone for the first call. And there are times where the avoidant is the one starting, but it's usually because the other person's drawn a line in the sand. They're just done.
Right.
And then they're like, okay, well, if you want to work on this, fine. I've been asking you for the last 10 years. Now I'm done. Now they're like, okay, I'm willing to do anything. And then so sometimes in those cases, it's the avoidant, which is usually the male in that case.
So my one question here is, when should couples really come to you? And the second part of the question is, have relationships been saved even when it needed deep cleaning? You're like, oh my God, this is going to end. We're going to end. It's going to end in divorce. The big D word.
The second one's really easy to answer, so I'll start there. And it's an absolute yes.
Oh.
And the reason is, even in they've done outcome studies on EFT, and with over 10,000 couples, about 15 different studies. Don't quote me on that. It might be 10.
Okay.
But there's been 15 about a lot of outcome studies where they actually see, is this approach working, right? They go through 12 sessions with really good EFT therapists, and they kind of, rate them in the beginning, how they're starting, and then at the end, and then 3 years later, they follow up with them. So it's this kind of study. And interestingly enough, the reason I bring up the studies is because it's not just my experience. This is with 10,000 couples, right? But my experience is the same, which is it doesn't matter the level of distress coming in at the beginning, it doesn't inform the effectiveness at all.
Okay.
Right? And that includes if there's just been an affair, it includes all of that, right? The level of distress, the level of how much deep cleaning is required doesn't determine the success at all. Yeah. So meaning they have just as good of a chance to make it work as like a lower distressed sort of couple.
And all we need is them to be willing to seek help.
And both want to work on the relationship. That's it. There are what we call contraindicators. This is, so even if those two prerequisites are there, things that reduce the likelihood of it working, right? Which is active domestic violence where, and interestingly enough, it's not all domestic violence. If it's reactionary, meaning if it's happening in the moment, that's okay in the sense of we can work with it. If it's happening premeditatively as like a tool to control, coerce, that's different. That reduces the likelihood of success. The other one is when there's active affairs where the partner is not willing to give up that affair.
Oh.
Right? Now, if there was an affair and they're like it's done, it's over, that's okay again.
So you
It doesn't reduce the likelihood.
Well, we're almost come to the end of this episode, and it looks like it's ending on an optimistic note. So are you trying to tell me that trust can be rebuilt with EFT?
Absolutely. Yeah. And version 2 of the relationship, not only is it get them back emotionally to where they would have been before, but we're plugging the holes and blind spots that led to the affair in the first place. So it's a much more resilient and stronger relationship.
Okay, so we will talk about that, EMA, extramarital affairs, on another episode with you, OFIR. But before I let you go for today, what would be that one advice you would give couples who are listening to you? Just that one advice, going through whatever they come to you with, whatever issues they come to you with, whatever hurts they come to you with.
Lean into vulnerability. That would be my advice. Vulnerability sometimes has multiple connotations. It's weak, or what is vulnerability? It has like this connotation of like, I'm exposing a weakness.
Right.
In reality, and the way I define vulnerability is, if something is hard to share, if you don't know the outcome, you don't know how your partner will respond.
Right.
That is hard to do. By definition, that takes courage. And I call that vulnerability. So it's not a weakness. In fact, it's a strength to be able to trust in yourself to take a leap of faith type of risk and expose a wound, your amygdala wound, as we talked about, for your partner to, destroy it or to heal it. So to me, that would be my advice, to lean into that. And
one of those bearing of wounds kind of situation would be a past affair as well.
It's not about the event. It's about something that's hard to share. So it's broad, because what's hard to share for me is unique to me and maybe not unique or maybe different for you. So maybe an example is like your partner hangs up the phone on you.
Yeah.
And in the past you would react in a certain way.
Right.
You wouldn't share how that hurt you.
So something as simple as that?
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm thinking of the big stuff.
Yeah. And, big is relative. So I would say check in with yourself. What seems on a scale of 1 to 10 like a 1 or a 2? A little bit uncomfortable, but not so uncomfortable that if you got rejected for it, it would be too overwhelming and you would go back into your bubble and not want to share again. Because I want to set you up for success. I don't want to set it up in a way where you do something that's 10 out of 10, and then oftentimes when someone is sharing beyond their window of tolerance, right, they're not sharing very vulnerably. They're adding a but and a you, or they're looking down, or they're, right? Like they're not exposing their vulnerability very, very clear and congruently. So if that becomes the trigger to your partner and they don't respond well, that's going to be really painful. And you're going to think it's your vulnerability that they're rejecting, but in reality, it's your delivery. So to ensure the likelihood of success and that delivery being as clear as it can be, pick a 1 or a 2. So something And if you want a good analogy, if you have a fear of heights, and it's like a deathly fear, right? And you've never been on a roller coaster, you can't do any of that, but you want to overcome it. There's your prerequisite. You just want to overcome it. If your goal in life now is, I want to jump out of a plane, right? Let's just say, without someone pushing me, but me doing it by myself. Let's say that's your ultimate goal. I can think of like 1,000 steps between where you are now and jumping out of that plane. So let's say step one, because you're deathly afraid, is just like looking down 2 stairs, like, or imagining 1 flight of stairs, right? Just imagining it. If that's a 1 or a 2, you do that. You wait until that 1 becomes a 0, meaning you just allow your body to acclimate, your nervous system to relax. And now what is a 1 is a 0, meaning what is a 2 is a 1, right? So then you go to the first flight of stairs. You just wait until your body relaxes. You go to the 2nd floor. You do the same thing, then the 3rd, then the 4th. Before you know it, you're jumping out of planes. Versus you never embark on this journey, and you just like, one day I want to do it, but you're actually taking steps. Little bit of exposure therapy. That's really what this is.
So if I have to address someone hanging up the phone on me, do I talk to them about it? And
what's a 1 or a 2 out of 10? Because even that, like, what is, if accessing that pain and then imagining looking at them as a 10 out of 10, I'd say, no, that's too much, right? So maybe you do it in a text, or maybe you do it, maybe you don't even share it, the pain. Maybe you say, hey, honey, when you hung up the phone, something happened. I really want to share with you, but I don't know how it's going to go. I'm really scared to do it. What would that be like for you? So checking in, just starting with that. Maybe that's a 1 or a 2. Maybe that's even a 10. Okay. You have to check in with yourself. What is a 1 out of 2? If I got rejected, if it didn't go the way I would want it to go, would I still be okay? I would never recommend for someone to overexpose themselves. So that's really important.
Wow, and I thought communicating your deepest, darkest fears or feelings is the key to a happy marriage.
It is, but we got to titrate. We got to get there eventually. That's the goal eventually. And we got to do it with safety.
And that's where EFT comes in as well, and counseling comes in as well, and couples counseling is so very important.
Absolutely. And so, if people need help with that, then that's what we're here for.
So how do people connect with you, OFIR? Especially if they're here in Vancouver, in the Burnaby, Port Coquitlam area. You do have 2 offices in both these cities? Yeah,
we have about 60 locations for the company, across BC. But I work right now out of Port Moody. I moved from Port Coquitlam to a Port Moody office. I work there 2 days a week for myself, but they can reach us through our website at nofearcounseling.com. My email is director@nofearcounseling.com, so that's an easy one. Relatively easy to remember if you know how to spell counseling. Oftentimes people will spell it with 1 L, so it's 2 L's in counseling, but that's the way to go. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your practical insights into having a good marriage, a healthy marriage. And we hope to have this conversation again on a different topic with you, OFIR. I appreciate your time and your insight as well. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And for those that are anticipating the question I didn't answer, which is when, I'll give you that answer now if you want.
Sure,
when to come in.
Go ahead.
When to come in, I would say when you are both ready to not do the work as in you have to think of it as this huge mountain, but do that first step. When you're ready to do a first step, that's it. And really just to try 1 session, because almost everyone that's ever had this anticipation of me ganging up on them or taking the other person's side or just having a bad experience of couples therapy, they always come back and oh, this is so different than what I thought it would be. Because the client in EFT and in all couples counseling is the relationship. Meaning, you're not my client, you're not my client. It's your relationship. So why would I ever want either of you to feel like I'm taking anyone's side? That would go against your relationship. So just keeping that in mind. So when you're ready to take that 1 step.
Wonderful. And on that very positive note, if today's conversation sparked something for you, do share it with someone who needs to hear this. This is TBH with Natasha, where honest conversations happen right here. Thank you for being with us.